Hello, everyone. Hello, Dallas. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all my global viewers. Thank you so much for joining. And this is coming live on Facebook as well as YouTube. Welcome to my show, Global Gupshup, on Asia News presentation. And I'm your host, Anu Benekati, and taking you every time all on exciting journey along with me to meet extraordinary, inspirational guests in every episode. Friends, today I would like to welcome you all, a very special welcome to all women globally in joining hands with me to celebrate this year's International Women's Day. So let's celebrate, let's continue to celebrate and appreciate the success, achievements, contribution of many inspiring women throughout the month of March globally. So I'd like to say this year's celebration must give a very special credit to all women, indeed, because that's why the hands that rock the cradle is the theme of Global Gupshup throughout this month of March, dedicated to all deserving women. Actually, with the great pride, I want to say that, overcoming we just experienced the pandemic of COVID, the challenge has a major contribution from women wearing different hats, being a mom, especially supporting every single corner, every single way, every possible, cause. The support was awesome. And this year theme is, as you all know, choose to challenge. So let's see who will choose what challenge. Being said that, I tried my best to, like I said, we are going to celebrate this whole month. Many such women who can share their secret of success and with all of us, guiding us and also to lift every woman's spirit and going towards success. Friends, I have today a very special guest with me in the studio who is an award-winning physician, a medical director, an author, and a wonderful mom. So she's a board certified reproductive endocrinologist and infertility specialist. She has published her writings in many numerous journals, including Fertility, Sterility, Human Reproduction, Women's Health Issues, Journal of Pediatrics and Obstetrics and Gynecology International. She's the author of the books Miracle Baby. We'll be talking about a little bit detail about that, what that book is, and what made her write that book also. A fertility doctor's fight for motherhood is what I'm talking about, and the fertility manual, we should say, is definitely one. Reproductive options for your family. So she's a recipient of numerous awards as well, including a D Magazine's Top Doctors in Collin County 2020, Texas Monthly Top Doctors, Mom Approved Doctors by Dallas Fort Worth Child Magazine in 2015 and 2019, Collin County Top Doctors, and more. So without further ado, I am so excited and I would like to welcome Dr. Duret Nur Hassan to the show.
Thank you,
Thank you
Anne.
for joining and welcome.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, it's very exciting for me to have you on the show, and like I have so many things that I want to discuss it with you, and I'm very sure that just like me, all my viewers are excited to have you over. So thank you again. I'd like to start before even we go further. That I want to wish every woman who deserves globally a very happy International Women's Day, because I think, since I'm calling the show as Hands That Rock the Cradle, because that can rock, do anything. Even the impossible will become possible. So which we will be talking a part of that, which you are committed to. So today. So let's start. Before we even begin, I want to ask you on behalf of all women. So, like we just went through such a hard time with the pandemic, and it is still going on. So how safe is it to go through this process? Is this safe enough for all women to even try that and also become successfully without any risks?
Yeah, so women have been having babies for centuries, and we have done a lot at my practice to prevent the transmission of COVID. And so we check temperatures at the front door, have everyone fill out questionnaires. Have you been exposed? Have you had a fever in the last 14 days? We have pretty strict precautions in our clinic, and it's been almost a year since the pandemic started, and knock on wood, we have had no infections in the clinic. And so women can continue to live their daily lives, can continue to have babies, but just do so in a safe manner. It's going to take the globe, the entire world, several years to completely figure out COVID-19. But in the meantime, we as humans, we're carrying on with our lives, wearing a mask, washing our hands, and socially distancing. And the vaccine is finally getting out to everyone. And hopefully, I'm hoping in the next several months that everyone on the globe can get vaccinated. And I think that's going to be a big breakthrough in terms of curtailing this disease.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Like whenever we think about the saying that it takes a village to raise a baby, this one is like a big challenge now for that, I guess. So
Exactly. It takes the
that
whole
we need
world.
to whole world to raise a baby now. Yes, absolutely. So before we start, let's find out more about you and like about yourself, like where you're from and how you got here. So just give us a little bit about yourself to our viewers.
Absolutely. So I was born in Guyana in South America, and my family, we moved throughout the Caribbean and finally settled on St. Croix, which is part of the United States Virgin Islands. And so my family still lives in St. Croix. And so whenever I say I'm going home to see my family, that's where I go home to. I started college there at University of the Virgin Islands, and then was lucky enough to be selected as part of Boston University's School of Medicine's one of their 8-year early medical school selection program. And this one is called the Early Medical School Selection Program at BU. And so I finished college at BU and matriculated straight into medical school. I enjoyed my education in Boston. I really enjoyed living there, but the winters were incredibly grueling. And so I moved to Houston, where I pursued a residency in obstetrics and gynecology. And I have always wanted to help women and children, and pursuing obstetrics and gynecology was exactly what I wanted for me. I saw myself helping women, and this is Women's Awareness Month and International Women's Day. And so helping women was something very important for me. It's during that obstetrics and gynecology residency in Houston, I got exposed to the subspecialty called reproductive endocrinology and infertility. And that's when I fell in love with that part of medicine. I enjoyed helping people start and grow their families and seeing how incredibly happy they get when they can finally have a baby. And so I furthered my education by pursuing a fellowship in reproductive endocrinology and infertility at New Jersey Medical School. And now I've been in private practice for about 12 years, the last 9 years here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Wow, that's an incredible journey, and I'm so happy that you decided to move to Texas, so that that we are definitely enjoying you being here with us. So you're very successful practitioner, and I know that like a lot of different ways that you help the community, and I'm very sure that you have made a lot of parents' dream come true. So what I mean, like, will you please share some of your experience briefly that, and what does it take, to have this kind of a treatment, and how you begin as a physician? What is your experience with that when
Yeah,
you're beginning
so
your practice?
when patients come and see me, one of the first things I do is take a very thorough history, just trying to figure out how long have you been trying to get pregnant? What have you done? What's working? What's not working? And then we set them up for a series of testing. And The testing can seem excessive, but we have to figure out why they're not getting pregnant. And there's so many different causes of infertility. So we do blood work, ultrasounds, histosalpingograms, which is a dye test to see if the fallopian tubes are open, and then a semen analysis. And that evaluates sperm quantity and quality. And after they're done with all the testing, they meet with me again for a regroup appointment, and we sit down and we go through details of the testing results and then come up with a treatment plan. And the treatment plan varies from person to person. It really depends on what their testing show and what we think their prognosis will be. So some patients will start off with simple things like taking pills such as clomiphene citrate or letrozole. Others will utilize intrauterine insemination. That's where we put the sperm directly into the uterus to improve fertilization. And then many others will move on to in vitro fertilization, IVF. IVF is where the woman would take injectable medications to help her ovaries produce the eggs. We would retrieve the eggs surgically, and then the eggs are fertilized in the lab to create embryos. The embryos will grow in the incubator for several days. If patients choose to, they can do pre-implantation genetic testing of the embryos, and then we'll freeze the embryos, and then subsequently prep the uterus and transfer the embryos. So the treatments vary depending on what the testing show and the prognosis of that patient.
So what does it take for you to give them that, hope to say yes or no? So how hard it is for you?
In the 21st century today, really becoming a parent is very, very possible. And some of my patients, it happens in a few months. And then there are others that are with me for a couple of years until we finally get there. But hope is very important. The technology has improved significantly. The first IVF baby was born in 1978. We have over 40 years of IVF experience. And so it is possible to have a baby.
Wow, that's really something that we want to hear. And 40 years, it sounds awesome. So every person coming out there with the hope, and I'm very sure they're like, okay, 90% is going to happen. So that is a great feeling for every parent, I bet. So, the one of the special things I wanted to talk to you about is being a physician, infertility specialist, endocrinologist, knowing all the stuff in and out, and you yourself also being a patient, going through 5 cycles. And I really want to know that, what is your experience with that? Because being a physician and a patient, so I'm very sure that like every corner of it, and like, and what happens and what not, and you definitely will become even a better physician and also a better mom, and also you can give a lot of advices without even thinking, because you've already been through that. So share that experience with us, because we really want to know how does it actually work.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So being both the physician and the patient is a very unique perspective. And to be able to see it from both sides of the exam table brings a lot that I can then turn around and offer my patients, because I've truly walked in their shoes. So I met my husband much later in my reproductive life, and we struggled to have a child. And like you mentioned, it took us 5 rounds of IVF to create one good embryo out of 5 rounds. And it's just, we had a lot working against us. That embryo was subsequently transferred to a surrogate. And it's because of my surrogate's kindness that I'm a mother today. And so I listen to my patients, and I know exactly what they're feeling and what they're going through, because I know I've been in their shoes. I know that roller coaster where you get your hopes up, thinking that this is a cycle that's going to work, and then only to have those hopes come shattering in a couple weeks later when you realize, oh, I'm back to square one again, and we got to figure out how to move on to the next cycle. And with each disappointment, with each cycle that's negative, it takes a huge emotional and mental toll on you, and finding that courage to just pick yourself back up and figure out, how am I going to do another cycle? And so it does give me a lot of empathy for my patients.
Sure. So tell me, like when you found out that you have to choose this pathway to become a parent. So what was your reaction? Like what I mean, like how did you decide that okay, this is it, and then I'm going through this? It's a very
Well,
critical decision for a person to make.
you're absolutely right. It's devastating. And as a woman, we feel it's our innate right as a woman to reproduce and have children. And, you know, I certainly mourn the loss of not being able to carry my own child or have my baby kick inside of me. So it was a difficult, many, many months, maybe many, many years dealing with that.
Yes.
But once you figure out that, okay, this is my path, and these are the cards I was dealt, and I'm just gonna have to figure out and how to deal with it and move on and make it happen. And so that's what I did.
Yeah. Tell me, so like, is this so like I know that once you start, there is a lot of that emotional, physical changes that women go through during the treatment. So, did you also experience that?
The injections are actually quite easy. They're not as scary as people think. They're all
Mhm.
subcutaneous, so they're pinprick. They're just tiny pinprick needles.
Oh,
They go in the belly or thigh. If you know anyone who takes insulin for diabetes, or have had a TB skin test,
oh,
that's what the
wow.
injections are like. They're just subcutaneous, so they're not terribly painful. And as you take the injections over several days, your estrogen level goes up, and so women do great when their estrogen levels go up. They feel good about themselves. Estrogen makes us feel very good. So I did not have any problems with the injections, and certainly didn't have any problems at
Hmm.
all with any emotional changes or anything. Because if anything, you feel better with higher estrogen levels. I think
Hmm.
a lot of it comes from just more the psychosocial aspect of really wanting and trying to have a child, and the anxiety, stress, depression that can bring when it's not happening fast enough. But the injections was actually okay.
Hmm. Wow, that's good to know because I know there is a lot of fear and a misconception that people have by reading so many, so-called the Google advisors. So I think it's always
Scratch Google.
yes, yes, but it's always good to know the what real fact is because I think it's easier than what you think, and I'm sure that with the strong mindset and when you're ready to face anything for being a parent, I think those hurdles look like a very small one. So there is another very important thing that when we were talking about this that you mentioned about was the reproductive mental health. I know that a lot of them, even as a young mother, they are, they have been in alcoholism and, like a cigarette, all those smoking. Even on top of that, the mental health is also very important. So, how do these factors actually contribute for, the IVF treatment?
So ideally, if anyone who's trying to get pregnant, we tell them to don't smoke, no alcohol, no drugs, eat a healthy, well-balanced diet, get moderate amount of exercise. So just getting your health up to speed, taking vitamins, those things are important. Now, some women, a large percentage of women, once they start trying, will get pregnant. But 1 in 8 women, which is quite a bit of women as well, will not get pregnant and will have infertility. The infertility leads to a lot of stress, that
Mhm.
constantly trying every month and it not happening. And it can lead to a lot of frustration.
Right.
We when we really want it to happen, and the most difficult aspect of this is that we have no control over our fertility. It feels like a completely uncontrolled fashion. It's not like you could eat a specific thing or do a specific thing and boom, 100% you're guaranteed you're going to be pregnant. So that lack of control, because you're trying so hard and you're doing everything you think you should be doing, but it's not happening, leads to a lot of stress. And then some women can struggle with anxiety and depression. So it's very, very important in those scenarios that patients see a therapist. And even more importantly, I would say join support groups. With 1 in 8 couples struggling with infertility, it's incredibly common. And one of the things that make patients do better is to know that they're not alone and that there are other people going through
Yes,
exactly what they're going through, feeling the
going through.
exact
Yeah.
same symptoms that they're going through.
Yes, yes, yeah, I agree. Absolutely. It's more important the support coming from everywhere that will. But even after that, like, some of these critical things like a depression, some women are on a medication of depression. So how does it even affect the fetus or even the post or the pre-complications?
So most of the anti-anxiety, anti-depression medications can be taken with pregnancy. A lot of patients, you're right, are on that before even trying to get pregnant. And what I tell patients is,
Mm-hmm.
if you think you can come off of it before getting pregnant, then let's do it. But there are others that they cannot come off of
Mm-hmm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
and where the benefits of
Mm-hmm.
the medication certainly outweigh any risk, and so they should stay on the medications.
So, let's also talk a little bit about the surrogacy, and that like there should be a trust. And so, what are the do's and don'ts and the complications of surrogacy that both for a person who is actually taking that and person also just donating the egg sperm and then
Yeah, good
having the
question.
womb for that. Yes.
Very, very good question. So with surrogacy, it's tough. So my husband and I describe finding a surrogate as trying to do a job interview and still trying to meet like a mate at the same time. It's it,
Oh my
it's
God.
it's very interesting because you're going to have a very emotional connection to this person for many, many
Oh
months, and
yes.
trust in this
Yes.
person with what we
Mm-hmm.
felt was our most prized possession, which was that one embryo total that we had. So
Yes.
it is difficult
Mm-hmm.
finding the right person, and it really is
Person.
finding a match, and match is the key word here, where you find someone who
Mm-hmm.
matches you well, has your same views and perspectives in pregnancy. And so we used an
Mm-hmm.
agency to help us, and I think we probably talked to about a dozen
Okay.
women before we found the right person that we thought was right for us.
Wow.
And once we found the right person, it was very, very easy. I trusted her carrying my son. I never called her 20 times a day and asked, "What did you eat? What did you do?" Any of that. I literally only spoke to her when she went to a doctor's visit, and I was on the phone call as well. But otherwise, I allowed her to live her life, and she
Mm-hmm.
allowed me to live my life, knowing that I don't need to be updated on everything, only on the big things. And we had a good, trusting relationship, and she was
Oh.
the perfect match for me. So
Mm-hmm.
the biggest thing is just finding the right person that matches you.
Wow. That's yes, absolutely. There is emotional connection as well as in a way of a physical connection too through someone that is actually you are going to have meet in a very short time. So it's a very exciting and also a very stressful feeling. Trust is definitely a bridge that actually we have to kind of, yes. Well, thank you for sharing that because I know a lot of the parents are thinking about it and then going through that. So another thing that's quickly, like, if you want to put it in a very short description of, like, about the just let the viewers know about the process of IVF, in vitro fertilization, just how it starts, what happens, and the time period, and then the results.
Yeah, absolutely. So for IVF, many
Hmm.
times we have the woman take suppressive medications for a few weeks prior to starting. It's usually
Hmm.
some type of hormone.
Hmm.
Many women just go on birth control pills for about a month prior to starting. And then they start the injections. And as we talked about, the injections are all subcutaneous. They typically are on these
Hmm.
injections for about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks tops. And at the end of that week and a half to
Hmm.
2 weeks, they undergo the egg retrieval.
Hmm.
So during that week and a half to 2 weeks, while they're on the injections, they come in for what's called monitoring visits. So essentially, we're literally monitoring how well they are responding to these injectable medications. So we're doing a series of blood work and ultrasounds. We're looking on the blood work to make sure the estrogen level
Hmm.
goes up with every visit, and on the ultrasounds that the follicles, so follicles are sacs of fluid containing eggs, that those are getting larger and larger in the ovaries. And once we think that everything is at the mature or ripened stage, then we proceed with the egg retrieval. They will typically get anesthesia for the egg retrieval, so they won't feel or remember any part of it. It's all done vaginally. There are no incisions on the belly. And then they go home, same day procedure, go home. That's it, they're done. So a week and a half to 2 weeks of injections leading up to the egg retrieval procedure. And then it's up to us, myself and the lab, to grow the embryos. And many times if they want the embryos biopsied and pre-implantation genetic testing done ahead of time, we can do that. And then we freeze the embryos. And then we give the woman some time for her ovaries to shrink back down. Typically, we start on birth control pills with her subsequent menstrual cycle while we wait as well for the pre-implantation genetic testing results to come back. And once we have the results back, we will prep her uterus, and it's just a series of hormones. And usually those are more patches and pills and suppositories and maybe 1 or 2 injections.
Right.
But it's their ovaries don't get big during that process. And then we just transfer an embryo to the uterus. And IVF has gotten so successful in the last 40 plus years. Now we have vitrification, which is a rapid way of freezing the embryos. So the embryos survive incredibly well. And the frozen embryo transfers do incredibly well with high pregnancy success rates. And because the technology has improved so much in the last several years, we literally can transfer a single embryo now and get pregnancies out of those. Back in the day, 20, 30 years ago, we had to transfer multiple embryos, hoping and crossing our fingers that at least one take. But now the technology is so good that you can just transfer one.
Because I was actually going to ask you that, a lot of, the cancer patients, sometimes if they have to go through this, that they also choose to freeze their eggs. That way, they can actually, in the future, they can have hope to have a baby. So what do you have the expectation, for their, of the success for such cases?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So egg freezing. So egg freezing became something that you can electively do here in the United States as of 2012, when the American Society for Reproductive Medicine came out and said that the benefits of egg freezing outweighed the risk. Now, prior to 2012, the technology had existed, but we were doing it mostly in patients who really needed it. For example, you gave a perfect example. Someone's diagnosed with cancer and they need to undergo chemotherapy. And so they try to freeze eggs before undergoing their chemotherapy treatment. But after 2012, any woman can electively freeze her eggs now. So you're a young female who wants to travel the world, pursue her education, wait until she meets Mr. Right, she can also freeze her eggs. And so we are actually seeing incredibly good success rates with egg freezing. And the success rates have gotten so good now that donor egg banks are starting to show up because the technology has gotten so good. But before, when we were just doing it with cancer patients, because they have cancer, there's a lot of inflammation in their body. Many times their eggs don't do as well. But when we see young women who are electively freezing eggs, their eggs freeze and thaw incredibly well. We're talking about 95% freeze thaw rates. So very, very good success rates, which has made things so much easier now. Back in the 1940s, you had to choose, do you get married and have your babies, or do you go travel the world? And now you can have both. You can have both of it.
And then just come back. You can have a cake and eat it too. Yes, that's definitely one of the options we all have. So smart technology, yes, absolutely. Yes. So yes, absolutely. That is a wonderful way of just trusting our technologies. And another thing that I also wanted to ask you is this is related to genetics. About coming back to surrogacy. So there are certain genes, for example, that have never been expressed or recessive in that surrogate mother. So do you think they will also be passed on to the fetus in any way at all? I mean, I don't know how it works, but I'm just curious. Is it a possibility?
Nothing that I know of as yet. So the biological information of the child is pretty much what the egg and sperm predispose that child to
Come
be.
off. Right,
So
right.
nothing that I know of as yet.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. So surrogacy so far has
Mm-hmm.
been great. There's been no genetic information transferred, and that I know of that can be a problem in the future.
Yes, yes, yes. So all this time that we talked about, the success and all this, the power that of technology making us feel good as women. So we are celebrating the Women's, Day and a month and International Women Success. So let's go a little bit further and say that I want to ask you that what is an women empowerment to you? So because this year's challenge is choose to challenge. The theme is so. Like, what is it that you would, if I give you that, like, what would you choose to challenge yourself?
Yeah, so women empowerment means women helping women and supporting each other.
Right.
We can do so much by helping each other instead of being critical of each other. And we are all beautiful and talented in so many different ways. And
Right.
how we choose to express that is very important. And I think we just need to support each other. So I'm choosing to challenge each and every woman listening to me right now to be supportive of each other. And you'll see when you do that, you create a positive environment that people are happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads to a lot of productivity. And that's just a great environment to be part of.
Absolutely. I think lifting one another in and supporting each other definitely makes a huge difference, in each other's life. And that also makes a one person feel good and then gives a lot of confidence, hope, and to do a better things for themselves as well as the other person. So you're, I mean, I am always wondering, like, you do so many of these a day, and I'm very sure it takes incredible amount of positivity. So what inspires you to, and where do you get that? And what is it that you actually have a secret to get it every single day?
I wish I knew what the secret was, honestly, because sometimes I'm so tired. I wish I knew what the secret was. I'll tell you though
Just
what
trying.
inspired. um, so what inspires me is so as a child and even as adult, the most inspirational person that has been in my life is my maternal grandmother. So she taught me she as a woman growing up
Ooh,
in Guyana, which is a developing country in the early 1900s. She had to endure a lot,
mhm.
both physically and
Right.
mentally. And so, listening to her stories, knowing that things could always be worse, and that I should always see the cup half filled. That keeps me very, very
Yes.
positive. And I always see a silver lining in every single cloud. And that has pulled me out of so many negative situations where things that would bother other people mentally doesn't bother me because I tend to see it in a
Oh,
different light. And so
right,
that
right,
what
right, right,
keeps me inspired. In terms of my day-to-day activities, I enjoy dancing and yoga and running and exercising. And that, in addition to giving me physical health, I find that it gives
right.
me mental health, which also is very good for my being. And so
Yes.
that also is part of my inspiration. And then surrounding myself with, I'm very, very lucky to have amazing family and friends. I have been incredibly lucky in that respect. And surrounding myself with people who bring me so much love. Even if I feel like I'm always
Absolutely.
the person who's given the love and doing stuff all the time, it brings me so much joy to do that for
Right.
others that it keeps
Right.
me
Right.
grounded and very happy.
Yes. Yes. I mean, the pleasure is both ways, and either way, it may, if it makes you happy, then yes, it's definitely worth it, and we should continue doing that. as well. So, being said that, like, I can see those books behind you, and I know I have heard so much about those books. So, what made you write those books, The Miracle Baby? So, this it definitely gives you so much of a information in that, from starting from being so disappointed, or just going from so many stages to like how it really raises the positivity and reaching that stage where that, yes, it finally happened, and the miracle. So tell me a little bit about, so that what is that made you write that book, and what is that you wanted to convey the message through that book to everyone.
Absolutely. So when my son was going to be born, so a few months before his birth, I decided I was going to take some time off from working, leave private practice for a little bit. And so I started telling my patients, hey, I'm going to be leaving. And they said, well, we really love you and respect you so much. Why are you leaving? And well, I was going to have a baby. And well, obviously I was not pregnant. And so there was no belly there because my surrogate was pregnant. And so that led me to have to like divulge my entire story to several inquisitive patients. But they told me after they heard my story that they loved me before they heard that story, but after hearing that story, they really appreciate that I knew exactly what they're going through right now and that I've experienced that. And so they were the ones actually that told me I needed to write a book. I needed to share my story with the world because
Right.
infertility is still a taboo subject and people don't realize how common it is and it can happen to anyone. And so after my son was born, between feeds and diaper changes, I sat down and my computer and just typed as fast as my fingers could move on the keyboard and started my book. And you'll see that book, Miracle Baby, A Fertility Doctor's Fight for Motherhood. When you read that book, there are two parallel stories in that book. The first story is my life story, what it's like to be the oldest child in an immigrant family who moved to the United States, and some of the things we endured. And then the second story in that book is my struggles with infertility and how it led us to having a baby. As you read the book, you'll see that it's a book of love, faith, perseverance, and hope. And the second book that's behind me, that's called the Fertility Manual. And what I've noticed over the years is that it's very difficult to deal with infertility, and sometimes doctors use language that's just difficult to understand. So what I wanted to do was write a very simple, easy to read book that would teach patients the basic lingo of fertility, and that they can walk into their doctor's office feeling knowledgeable and equipped to ask the right questions and feel in charge of their care. So this second book, The Fertility Manual of Reproductive Options for Your Family, actually I gave that a copy of both books, actually. The first copy or the first draft was read by my husband. And he said, when he read that book, The Fertility Manual of Reproductive Options for Your Family, he said, I wish someone had given this book to me when we started out this fertility journey. And this is coming from my husband, who's married to a fertility doctor who can like wake me up in the middle of the night and just ask me a question. But he still felt like he didn't know the language. And so, and for him to say that means that there's so many more people out there that really just want to have some basic understanding of what is infertility and how they can be in charge of their own care.
Yes, absolutely. Because in a day-to-day life, where we experience that one with the very simple things. Like if you tell a person that give me an approximate sodium, and this like what like, and it's simple language as I live, and they're like, oh, okay. So it making it easier for a person to understand in their own simple way. That definitely helps to understand, and actually it makes you feel more comfortable also to go through that process. And definitely it's an amazing way to convey the message. And since you have been through that, and I think the how do you say that the cord was connected through someone else, but you are the one who is experiencing it, and also that convey that message in a very grand way to others, like I have been through this and I know all about it, and you can do it too. And it's that easy. read this and then it will be a piece of cake for you. So that was a great message conveyed in that book. And tell me, like, what is your message to our viewers that you have, that wrote that book? So what is the message that you're conveying through that book, like, while reading that book? So what is the strong message that they have to get out of that book?
The biggest message I can give anyone is hope. It's figuring out
Oh,
how to stay hopeful when everything seems like it's cloudy and dark, and how to be able to see through that and see a shining light of hope.
oh yes. Oh yes. That is a wonderful message that, yes, I can see it. So if any of our viewers would like to reach out to you or buy the book, or even just, I know this show is being watched by globally, but locally, if anyone wants to approach you, so what is the best way to reach out to you?
Absolutely. So I am on all forms of social media, and I actually will have educational posts
Hmm.
and videos on these forms of social media. So on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, my handle is just at DuretteMD.
Hmm.
And then on YouTube,
Hmm.
it's my channel is Fertility Dr. Durette Nurhassen. Um, my website is www.nurhassen.com, so just
Yes.
my last name.com. And then anyone locally who would love to become a
Yes.
patient, learn more about their own fertility, get testing, maybe treatment,
Hmm.
my office number is nine seven
Yes.
two
Yes.
377 2625.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's really a great pleasure talking to you. And you have given a treasure of information to all of our, women who are looking for such help. Especially after 2020, things have been so difficult for everyone, because, the COVID-born babies are also, they had a lot of issues, and, there's nothing that they could not, come over, or, they got better easily. Everything was so good. And we got excellent information from you, so I'm really grateful for sharing this information with us. And folks, that you can actually go to Amazon. The book is available on Amazon.com as well, The Miracle Baby and the Fertility Manual. And do read it, like Dr. Durrett said. Then, it is definitely one of the best book that you invested yourself in. And, you will get all the information. And thank you so much for coming on my show and sharing all this information as well, and giving hopes to a lot of them out there globally. And if you want, you can also consult a infertility specialist to go through this one locally, your physician. There are many, and in Dallas, of course, we have the best one here. So you can talk to her. And well, folks, being said that, thank you everyone for joining, and hope you all enjoyed and got a lot of information from this show and had a great time as well. And thank you, Dr. Nur Hassan, again, for joining and sharing your valuable time with us. And coming up this, and this March, on Global Gupshup, that we are going to be having a lot more women coming and sharing their success story with us. As absolutely, stay tuned for that, and do join me this coming 10th of March. And one of our philanthropists, Dr. Jhansi Reddy is going to be joining uh, to share her experience with how it makes a difference getting involved with the community to help the children and women, in our own country as well as here. So thank you so much. Stay cool, stay connected, and don't forget to join Global Gupshup next time. Thank you so much.